Hey YouTube, it is League Turnover today, so it is now Ultra League and actually a repeat of Little Element Cup. I will have the new updated rankings for Little Element Cup and new teams for that this afternoon. But today we are going over teams for the newly buffed Pokemon. So I'm going to cover 5 of them today, and we are going to start with the one that has jumped all the way up to number 2, and that is Steelix with the new move Breaking Swipe. So before, when you were running this Pokemon in this league, you would usually run Dragon Tail Fast Move, Psychic Fangs, and Crunch was the usual moveset. Psychic Fangs would obviously lower the opponent's defense, and then Crunch was nice coverage just for, you can run Crunch or Earthquake. Crunch is just nice coverage for for Giratina, and then Earthquake gives you something to throw at like fairies. So now it has Breaking Swipe, and Breaking Swipe will make this significantly better in Ultra League in my opinion. So 28 and 20 record. The reason I said it's not as good, so people have different opinions about Steelix in Great League. My main issue with Steelix in Great League is, yes, it's bulky, but unlike the level 50 bulk that you get here, you get like level 20 to 30 bulk there when there are a ton of level 45, level 48, level 50 Pokemon. So the bulk advantage there is not as significant as it is in Ultra League. The second issue is the Ultra League, if we go to the main weaknesses here before we actually go to the matchups, fighting, fire, ground, and water. And again, the Great League meta is predominantly defined by fighting, ground, and water. That you'll find at least one, maybe two of those on like 90% of the teams. So that is why I think it's weaker in Great League. However, Ultra League, they're still fighting around for sure. Obviously, there's like no fire. Ground is significantly less. Like there is G-Fisk, but outside of that, like some of the other ground in Great League, like Diggersby and stuff like that, like cannot get up to this. So there's less ground, and there is some water, like Swampert, Tapu Fini, Water Shuriken. So there's definitely going to be some weaknesses, but there won't be probably as many. So if we go to the rankings, like I said, there is still Tapu Fini and G-Fisk, and then there are a bunch of fighters in Great League. Escav, Kabalion, Scrafty, Poliwrath, Registeel with Focus, not a fighter, but has Focus Blast. Powder Snow, A9 is Fairy, so your Dragon moves are going to be resisted, so you need to land an Earthquake there, but you're just going to get outpaced anyways. Swampert's still here. Right, lots of candies. There's Virizion, Machamp, so, and the new Water Shuriken, Hydro Cannon, Greninja. So there is quite a lot of weaknesses. Where I think you will have an advantage is just your bulk, and one, Giratina was one of the best save swaps in this meta since season 1, essentially. Like one of the best save swaps in this meta. You now have like an amazing answer to it. It was already a good answer if you ran Dragon Tail Crunch. You now have Dragon Tail Breaking Swipes, lowers the attack, so just like a huge improvement there. And it just seems that like a lot of these other Pokemon, this is where you're seeing because Charizard can land a Blast Burn on you, right? But this is where you're just seeing the bulk of this Pokemon combined with the Breaking Swipes, just being able to like shield the first and lower the attack, lower the attack, lower attack. And then by the time you probably get to like multiple Blast Burns, you've already lowered their attack. So that's only doing 50%. And then you actually just outpace to the move, right? So the Dragon Tail, Dragon Tail Breaking Swipes is going to be far stronger here, in my opinion, with this bulk than it will be in Great League. I will of course test this out. I actually have almost a rank 1 Shadow Steelix for this league, so I'll test it out. What can you pair it with? Well, if you're going to be weak to fighting, again, your main 3 you need to worry about are fighting and water. Let's say the main 2, fighting and water with a little bit of ground covered in. So in the first team, most of the fighters on this list, a lot of them are actually also weak to fighting, right? You have Obstagoon, Scrafty, Kabalion, Registeel with the Focus Blast, like all weak to fighting. So Virizion is a nice cover there. And then if you're going to be weak to, Virizion's weak to poison, and Steelix is weak to ground and water, a nice answer there is Tentacruel as a nice kind of safe swap because it has Blizzard to cover anything that it like resists the poison, and I guess water to deal with like neutral steals. Or you can go Swampert. Again, Swampert just still one of the best in league in this meta. This will handle the sort of the G-Fisk, Steelix, and it'll do okay in most fighter matchups. but then you have Cresselia to handle most of your fighters, plus does well against Tapu Fini with the Grass Knot there. So those are some ideas for Steelix if you would like to run Steelix. The second Pokemon we are going to look at is Greedent. Greedent got Mudshot. Again, it's just a normal typing, so it's only weak to fighting, which there is a lot of fighting in this meta, unfortunately. So Greedent's record is actually a mediocre 20 and 21, 27. It's probably less when you actually maximize stats here, which I did not do on Steelix. But 1929, right? So if you actually get like the rank ones throughout this, your record goes down to 1929, which is a pretty terrible record. And it made worse by the fact that there are what seems like hundreds, but a ton of, again, counter users in this meta. Cobalion, Escav, Obstagoon, Virizion, Machamp, Toxicroak, Poliwrath, Scrafty, Buzzhold, Defense Deoxys. So there's 10 counter users right there. And then you have Pokemon that will resist the Mudshot, Venusaur, Pidgeot, or just Pokemon where your Body Slam and Crunch just aren't going to be sufficient. Steelix, Registeel, Gliscor's resisting the Mudshot as well, right? Body Slam is not sufficient on the Walrein, although that's probably getting closer. My question is, what happens if you get a one Mudshot advantage? If you get in and you get one Mudshot before the opponent changes in, does that flip a bunch of matchups, 19 and 29 to 24 and 25, right? And this is why it's a good safe swap. You can use this as a safe swap, and if you get one Mudshot advantage, you just picked up 5 more wins. In the unlikely event that you get 2 Mudshot advantages, 29-20, you get a positive record, right? So that is why Greedent is very, very strong in this meta. I think it will probably jump into one of the top 3 to 5 safe swaps. You can see Double is ranked right below it. I think in terms of safe swaps, Giratina is going to have, was the one, it still could to a certain extent, but with way more Steelix, which I expect everyone to bring, and way more Ace and Slashes showing up everywhere, Giratina may take a little hit. Actually, let me just see what the switches are ranked here. But there's Greedent at number 7. Charizard. Yeah, Charizard's always sort of an okay one, because even if you get a Tapu Fini or something on it, like those wing attacks and blast burns still hit in neutral situations. Registeel is obviously super strong as well. Cress, I don't love Cress as much, because if you get on a Steel, like Grass Knot and Moonblast is just really, really tough to get back from. But then you have double Greedent right there at 6 and 7. So that does not surprise me. Greedent should be a good safe swap. So because that's going to be so safe, I just put 2 teams together, but you can basically put any sort of 2 pairings that you want that cover each other's weaknesses, right? So Buzzle as a fighter, covered. So that's not fighter. It has counter. Is it fighter? Yeah, it's fighter and bug. So double weak to flying. Registeel covers that. Safe swap Greedent. Tapu Fini, weak to grass. Fire cover here with the new Pokemon, which is, again, I think is a great closer. So if you have Tapu Fini who can grab shields and Greedent who can just spam, hopefully that can just close for you there. But again, Greedent is just one of those like super safe mid Pokemon. So this first team is double weak to fighting with Registeel and Greedent. So you probably have to try and pull out a fighter with one of those 2. Both can act as a safe swap. So pull out a fighter with one of those 2, and then Buzzle will take that, and the other one roams free to a certain extent. And then, yeah, but like really any core pairing that makes sense where they cover each other's weaknesses with Greedent as a safe swap is going to work in this meta. Number 3, we are now going down to, I'm guessing it's Golisopod. It is Golisopod. The X Scissor buff. This was already one that was like creeping up just regularly, and now we got the buff there. So weak to electric, flying, and rock. So electric, flying, and rock here. So if we go to the stats here, we have a 22 and 25 record, but with some like not impressive wins and some harder losses here, right? So again, weak to flying. So anything that's flying here is going to cause you problems. Charizard, even though you can hit liquidation here, so that's not a terrible matchup, but wing attacks and Dragon Claws or even Blast Burn, because your half bug will add up here. Zac Kevin, obviously super effective on Registeel, but then Flyer, Anything with a normal or dark typing, right? Because you're a claw, Shadow Claw, which will be resisted by normal and resisted by dark. So that adds a complication now that you don't have a bait move either. You just kind of have to go up to your main move. So those will be a bit of an issue. Water Pokemon to a certain extent too, because you can only throw claws and X scissors. And on the ones like Gyarados, which is half flying, half water, or half fighting, half water, which is it's just going to resist everything, right, on Poliwrath. So those are where the tricky matchups are. But again, some wins. Swampert is your hardest win is not an amazing Pokemon to like grab wins on, because like dominate, because you do win. Like your hardest win is Swampert, where you resist everything, right? You resist Mudshot, Hydro Cannon, and Earthquake, and it's only a 644. Do I have the shields everything the same? Yeah. So that's why this Pokemon is just very could be used as like mostly a safe swap. I think I would potentially use it as, because it doesn't have, or like a Swampert answer in the back. But other than that, you don't really have a ton of like just hard dominant matchups. One Claw makes it a little more medium distribution there, but nothing that like really changes the meta, right? So with that in mind, how do you build with Golisopod? So one of two ways. You can either use it as a safe swap, which I did for these two teams. So this is like a double weak to flying team. So you have like a Regirock lead, Golisopod, Hitmontop, the new one. We'll go over Hitmontop in 1 second. But basically try and pull out a flyer or something with this, punish it with Regirock, and then your Hitmontop will roam free without flyers in the back to a certain extent. Or the second team is a little more balanced, because there's no like weak to flying here. But you have like Registeel to cover your flyers, and just Florges, I think is just overall pretty strong. I think like Golisopod and Stunfisk can deal with the poisons, and it can deal with anything that will wall Steels, that will wall Florges, and these two are just generally safe. So it would just be like kind of like a balanced team with that as a safe swap. Team number 4, we are looking at Hitmontop. So it jumped to number 30, which again surprised me. So Fairy, Flying, and Psychic. Again, there's an okay amount of you're not resisting fighting, but there's a lot more fighting in this. So there's a little bit of Fairy and a little bit of Flying, but there's not like a ton. Plus, you can easily balance that, which I'm guessing I have a Steel on one of these teams. So 28 and 21 record is not bad. Again, Flying and Fairy, you're still going to lose. There's not much you can do about that, so just cover your weaknesses. And I mentioned in my Great League video on Hitmontop that if you're running close combat and triple axle, you will just Jellicent will just resist everything, and Jellicent is everywhere in this league. So make sure you have at least some coverage for that. But again, for the most part, anything that's going to resist counter, Fairies and Tapu Fini, Buzzhole and Golisopod and Bug, you're going to have problems with. But on the other end, there's still a lot of stuff weak to counter in this league. Obstagoon, you don't see him pulling on as much though, but a Sandslash, Aurora's, Umbreon, Steelix, if everyone's going to run that, you have an answer for Steelix. You're actually just going to like you can live a Hydro here and just get to the close combats and take that out. So quite strong. Like again, safe swaps in Greedent, Registeel, Double. These are all wins, right? So counter user here is not bad at all. And then you have the little bit of flying coverage and a little bit of grass coverage if you run into like a Venusaur here, or a what's more popular on Virizion. So with that in mind, I think it's pretty easy just to sort of balance it. So again, if you're weak to flyers, first team I put Steelix on, and the second team I put on Jellicent, because I said like the other thing you're really weak to is Bug, right? If anything that resists, so Poison that resists counter, Bug that resists counter, Jellicent will deal with that, and Jellicent's just one of the best safe swaps in the lead. Plus, you'll have coverage for like Guillotine and other things like that. Yeah, so that's that. I was about to say you're gonna be a bit weak to a Sandslash, but that's not. It's a little true, but not true, because Hitmontop will destroy a Sandslash, and then these two can do okay. Second option is again Swampert. Swampert works with everything almost, but if you're gonna run Swampert, you need to cover your grass weakness. So Pidgeot, being able just to Pidgeot lead, Brave Bird. Or I like Pidgeot lead with either a Brave Bird or Feather Dance, just to like force your opponent out or hit them with a Brave Bird. And then Hitmontop, the problem is you have to use kind of Hitmontop as a safe swap here, because you're running Swampert as a safe swap is very, very risky against like Virizion and stuff like that. unless you're running Sludge Wave, but it's still like a rough matchup. But yeah, Pidgeot, really rough against Steels, but you have basically Hitmontop and Swampert to deal with that in the back. And one that I did not get to cover in the Great League, that is actually somewhat top ranked, not super top ranked, but up here is Heliolisk at 35. It is an electric and unfortunately a normal typing, because that, see, the electric, you're weak to ground, and that normal typing adds the fighting. And yes, you double resist Ghost with the normal typing, great, but oh, that fighting in this Ultra League is tough to give up. So again, this should not be surprising. All the losses here, 21, 28. I know I won't optimize it, but like these are rough. These are really rough losses. Verizon, Cobalion, Stunfisk, Swampert, Steelix, Machamp. Like these are all 200 and 201 or less, and that means you're getting like destroyed. So if you're gonna run this team, looks like you need to run something that's gonna beat multiple counter users minimum. On the other end, because you're running you're an electric, so obviously water and flyers is great. You now have that coverage with the grass to hit the other Pokemon, like Swampert here at 601. You'll take that down with the grass move. And then what's the third move? Is it electric or is it? Oh, it's Breaking Swipe. It is Breaking Swipe, so you can deal with Giratina. You're still going to lose Giratina because Dragon will resist the electric, but you can at least chip it a bit there. So again, team building with this, if you're going to be super weak to fighting, I'm guessing I have a couple fighter coverage. Yeah, so the first one, kind of balanced team, but Charizard is one of your flyer or fighter coverage, right, as a flying, and then Poliwrath. Like I said, a lot of these other fighters are weak to fighting as well, so Poliwrath as a fighter that can beat that. Those other fighters is pretty good. And then on a second team is more ABB style with either Heliolisk or Cobalion as a safe swap to try and draw out a Swampert or, in particular, hopefully a fighter, and then punish it with a flyer in Drifloon. Again, Drifblim, you can use any flyer. It's just like, Drifloon is kind of cool. I haven't used that much, but you can use any other flyer here. And then Heliolisk to roam free in the back. So those are the sort of top teams for these new Pokemon. In terms of the meta, so much like the Great League that we've just seen, I fully expect people to test these Pokemon. I expect everyone to test Steelix because I think it is way better in Ultra League than it is in Great League. And it's like a direct answer to Giratina, which has just killed this league for so many years. So I expect people to try to deal with this, and I also expect to have people to try and counter it. For example, I know that I forget what the lead on it is, but the Cobalion Virizion backline is very common. It was a very common backline. You use Cobalion as your safe swap, draw out something like a flyer or something, and then Virizion roams free in the back. But now both double kick users will beat Steelix, right? I expect to see more double because it is a double kick user that is also probably better as a safe. Greedent's ranked higher, but double's probably more well-rounded just with the double kicks. Again, counter has such play in this meta, more so than Mudshot in my opinion. So you'll probably see a few more of those. With the main stuff that you always see, like Registeel, Swamperts. And it's interesting that Swampert's down to 12 and 18. That little Earthquake nerf dropped it out of the top 10, so that's interesting. But yeah, you could also see some Mandibuzz with Dark Pulse and Aerial Ace. Go with the Dark Pulse just because it hits harder and you have more of a bait move now in Aerial Ace that you can go quicker to, so you could see some more Mandibuzzes. I mean, Gliscor was already here last season once it got the wing attack buff, so that shouldn't be new. But like Walrein, Jellicent, this Scrafty, this league, Greninja, I didn't even go over Greninja because it's been around since last season, but I think Greninja in Ultra League is going to be way stronger than it is in the Great League as well. So unlike the Great League, so if you're new to the Ultra League or you haven't played it a ton, the Ultra League is the most open league right now. And if we look at Great League, like once you get to like 20, it gets into like sort of like niche territory. Like I did an analysis on Hitmontop saying it's like it's fun to use, but it's not like core breaker or anything. And like Jellicent, you're not really using Jellicent, you're just using like Sableye. Poliwrath, the Shadow version's already in the top like 20 because it's better. So like some of these Pokemon are fine. Diggersby at 36. But once you really get to like 40, 50, like these Pokemon are pretty niche at best that you're really not using. It's very concentrated, the Ultra League. The Great League. The Ultra League is wide open, quite honestly. Like, and as we go down to like the 40s and 50s, I'm confident using the majority of these Pokemon. Like Clefable, Shadow Zapdos I love using in this league. Obstagoon, Florges I think is strong. Trevenant, despite the nerf, is still very strong in this. Tentacruel is a safe swap, super great. A Sandslash everyone uses it if you can keep away from the fighters. Galarian Weezing at 64. Even if we get down to like 73 and Skunk Tank, stuff like that. Like now we're getting a little more niche. Like I've used Toxicroak and Surfetch, but they're a little weaker. But yeah, we're talking like top 75. I would be comfortable using in the Great League that you don't get that sort of flexibility, and I would be comfortable using Ultra League that you do not have that flexibility in the Great League. But that is it. Let me know in the comments below what you are going to try to run, if you're going to even play this league, because there is also the Little Cup on. So I will do some top teams for the new rankings and new Pokemon. Quaxley, spoiler alert, later this afternoon, and then we'll put out some teams on the weekend. So stay tuned for those. Hit that notification so you don't miss any videos. Appreciate the subs if you're new, and I'll see you guys in the next one.